Okay, so for a long time now I've been saying that these Morgan dampers have been fitted in the wrong orientation to the movement of the rear axle, and that's part of the reason why the rear end gets bound up. Well, it's part of the process of trying to extend the travel without lifting the top mounts for these dampers. Since I lowered the car, that's necessary because the lowering blocks reduce the travel. Unfortunately, actually the car has been riding on these bump stops for a long time now, which is less than ideal. But in the process of changing the bump stops, obviously I have to get the top eyelet out. But in order to do that, I thought the easiest way and the safest way, since the petrol tank's quite close, and I do need to apply some heat up the top here, just get it off the threaded rod. I thought I'd get the damper off, and in doing so it allowed me to inspect this rear bush, and just as I've said, the dampers are fitted in the wrong orientation to work with the direction of the axle, because as I rotate this you'll see what's been going on. Bearing in mind these dampers only really done 10,000 miles, so they've done no work at all, no real miles at all. But let's see what that bush looks like. Oval as hell. Look at that. Basically this is the twisting forces acting on the rear dampers, because they're just basically they're fitted in this inclined fashion at 90 degrees to the true movement of the axle. We've got rear spring shackles, and rear spring shackles obviously allow the axle to rotate backwards. So there, we've just seen the other side here, just as bad. That is awful, really bad. That is such bad engineering. Basically all that twisting load has gone into the bush. Thank God we got good Bilsteins on the back, and it's the only reason why they've survived is because we got really good Bilstein rubber bushes here. Had we had the original Avos on here, their horrible red bubblegum bushes would have failed within 100 miles probably, and that's what was happening when I bought the car. It failed its MOT on rear damper bushes, and when I went to check, although it had passed because it had had new rear damper bushes fitted, and that was only 100 miles after I checked, in actual fact one of the bushes had gone again. I couldn't believe it. So this is the reason why. The dampers are fitted like that, in that inclination, but what's actually happening is a lot of that, and that's what's destroying these bushes. And that's why I'm going to move over to coilovers. So we'll put Protex on the back, and we'll put them in the correct orientation to the rearward rotation of the axle. As the suspension compresses and the axle rises, it obviously moves back on the swing shackle. So instead of that happening, instead of fighting itself, it'll actually work in the same orientation as the suspension is designed to work. What the hell Morgan were thinking fitting these things like that, I do not know. But let's, anyway, for the time being, simply get the these big fat Bilstein bushes off, and that's just like a quick fix. I'll fit the Protec shorter bushes to give me an extra 12mm of travel. That will be only 12mm of travel because it has been riding on its bump stops, but once that damper is properly installed back where it was, the shorter bump stop will give me at least some travel in the damper, and at least it will work reasonably well. Probably do more damage to that because it's got more stroke after I've shortened the bush, the bump stop, but at least the damper will be able to stroke up and down instead of just basically riding on the bump stop. So there was this gap you can see here, just doesn't exist when it's on the car currently. So let's give it 12mm more of suspension travel just as a temporary measure until we weld the brackets on and get the coilovers on. There you go, that's a quality bit of engineering from Morgan. And 10,000 miles, that bush is completely knackered. What a bunch of Norberts, honestly. Right, that's the top eyelet separated. Just needed some heat. Basically there's some Loctite in there. Just move that out of the way, it's still a bit hot. What I want to look at is the total stroke of the rod. So there we go, we've got 70mm. So yeah, it's basically, give or take, it's a 70mm stroke, maybe just over, 72, something like that. So let's get it bob on. Let's bring it back down there. It's a 70mm stroke. Let's just leave it at 70mm. So there it is, 70mm. Then we got the bump stop. Let's measure up the bump stop. and that's a 40mm bump stop. So that rod there has a 30mm stroke. 70 less 40 is 30mm, so that's a 30mm stroke. So in actual fact, all you got on these dampers is that much a stroke. So just to give you an idea, there's my finger there, it's not much, you know, whatever 30mm a stroke is, it's basically just over an inch, inch and a quarter, isn't it? So there you go, inch and a quarter stroke, just under, that would be an inch and a quarter, so it's yeah, it's 30mm stroke basically. Alright, so bearing in mind the car's sitting on its bump stops, stay there, the car's sitting on its bump stops, the bump stop's 40mm, so we lost all the stroke. So we've got two options. We've got a bump stop, just to put it in its correct orientation, it looks like that. We've got a bump stop like that, which is shorter. So replace the 40mm one with this one. We'll measure him up. And what we got here? 25mm. So 25mm versus 30mm gives us 15 more millimeters of stroke. From 0 to 15mm of stroke, so still half the available stroke of the rod and the damper. Other option is that one. So we know that the damper is designed to have 30mm of stroke. We know if we use this one, it's going to release a little bit of travel in the damper. It's only going to give us 15mm of compression stroke. Let's measure up this one. And there it is. That looks like 19mm to me. It's not 20mm. That's 19. Let's try that again. Difficult to do this one-handed. 20mm, 19mm. Alright. So 19, let's call it 20 for easy maths, less 40 is 20mm of stroke. It's actually 21 if it's 19, isn't it? So we know that there's 30mm available stroke on this with the specified Bilstein bump stop. So we know it's not going to start smashing itself apart if we put this little tiny much shorter one on, because basically that's 19mm, and 19 less 40 is 19 less 40 is 21mm. So that leaves us with 9mm less stroke than the damper is designed to achieve. So that's very safe. It's not basically the damper's not going to smash all its internals apart, but it's going to give us a lot more travel on that. So that's going on there. That's still hot, so I won't touch that too much, but that's going on there with a bit of Loctite. And then we're going to have, you know, instead of having the car riding on its bump stops, we're going to have basically a nice 20-21mm of travel, which is still sort of 9mm less than it would have if these dampers were actually fitted correctly with the upper damper mount raised, as they should have been when I lowered the car. What a pain in the bum. Anyway, that'll fix it. This is a bodge. Well, it's not a bodge as such. What it is a quick down and dirty way to fix the problem and give me some rear suspension travel, or some rear damper travel, I should say. Being honest, I ain't going to fix that because the dampers are still in the wrong orientation, but it will mean the damper can start working as a damper now. Previously, it was Sir Alec Moulton's rubber suspension idea, basically. which is fine. That's quite a hard bump stop. It is a large diameter there, so it will deflect on the inside as well. But that's been doing all the work of Monty's rear suspension. So a bit like a Mini's rear suspension has rubber cones, Monty has had a rubber cone rear suspension. What we're going to have now is, at least we're going to have 21mm of damper travel, so the damper can start to do its job and not rely solely on this rubber bump stop. Right, let's get it all back together. Okay, so that's the damper fixed. These are the bump stop options for the Bilstein damper that I had available. Obviously the original one, the 40mm one. Then you got, you know, this one, which is, I can't remember, 26mm, something like that. And as you would have seen just now, they're actually gone for the even thinner one, what I'm calling the licorice all salt. It's quite squidgy, which is good. It's also got a nice chamfered edge on it, so it'll be nice and progressive. Okay, and what I've done is I've fitted it this way, so this face is now, actually I've bonded it to the upper eyelet flange so it stays always up. Doesn't really matter because it's going to get forced up anyway, but I just thought for neatness I'll bond it to the upper eyelet flange so it sits up there, and that's like that. So that's going to give me back my suspension travel. I think it's got about 5mm of squish in it, so 21mm more travel on the compression by using the licorice all salt, plus 5mm of squish. That's 26mm. Now rebound, so remember 26mm. Let's get rid of these. Rebound bump stop is that horrible thing. So for whatever reason, Morgan thought it was a good idea just to put this really horrible, hard as hell block on here. So that lives on the chassis rail, and the axle is sort of up here, smashing the living bejesus out of that basically whenever it chooses to. That's why it's probably you can see it's a little bit deformed here where the axle's been clouting it. That aside, let's measure it up. There we go. So there we go, we've got 21mm. Just a Nats cock over 21mm. But basically it's a 21mm thick rebound bump stop, lives on the chassis rail, axle up the top, smashy smashy. And my theory is that this 21mm thickness could be less, but we need something better than this to go in. So this is where it gets ingenious. Having restored many a Triumph TR3, I was reminded of these. So this is, as I've just said, off a Triumph TR3. Actually, they went through to the, they started off the Triumph TR2 all the way through to the 3, and then the 3A, and of course finally the 4. The 4 that was still on the solid axle before it went to trailing arm independent coil sprung rear suspension, which was a much better system obviously. That was carried over onto the TR5 and then the TR6, but enough Triumph history. This appeared on the 2, 3, 3A and the early 4s that were still on a solid beam axle basically. So this one's upgraded, still a bit greasy from the release agent actually. It's made in polyurethane. On the Triumph you'll see it's got this upper face here, so it is actually a compression bump stop as well. Obviously we've discussed the compression bump stop, and we're actually using this and a coilover damper. You know, the TR3 had a lever arm like early Morgans, so we can just discount that because there's nothing on the Morgan that's going to strike. So that's just there because this officially belongs to a Triumph. Okay, what I'm interested in is this here. So this now becomes your bump stop. So rather than having this, which lives on the chassis rail, and the bare axle moves up and down and smashes into it, this is same principle, just opposite. This is, as you can see, split. You attach it with cable ties. So you can see you got two flanged ends here to stop the cable ties coming off. Slip it over the axle, put your cable ties round, and the bottom one of these then becomes the rebound bump stop and does the job of this original horrible Morgan one that's 21mm. So if the purpose of this exercise is to improve the rebound travel, which it is, bear in mind we've already increased the compression travel by 26mm, then the interesting measurement, of course, is going to be this. So let's see what we got. We can already see we've gained some, which is good. Now, it doesn't seem like much probably to you, but on a Morgan, every bit of suspension travel, every millimetre is welcome. So we can now see we're at 16mm. All right, so we've gone from 21 to 16mm. So this actually gives me 5mm more rebound travel, and if we add it to the 21mm from this plus an extra 5 on the squish, 26, okay, we actually end up with a total of 31mm more suspension travel from full compression to full rebound. Now that doesn't probably sound like a lot again, but actually 31mm of suspension travel isn't bad at all. Let's show you what that looks like. There's 31mm. So we'll put the calipers down here and we'll show you. Almost get two fingers in there. That's quite a lot. If you imagine that's now from full compression to full rebound, how much suspension travel we've increased Monty's rear end. Bearing in mind, it was riding on bump stops, because the Bilsteins that were supplied to me, the chappie, lovely guy and all that, but you didn't actually tell me you need to raise the damper mounts by 30mm in order to get the stroke back in the damper. So not particularly helpful. It did result in my rear hoop getting smashed out of the chassis. That's all been welded and strengthened, which is good, because ultimately I am going to be fitting coilovers to the rear. So we've sorted out the rear damper compression temporarily with our lovely squishy licorice salt, and we've sorted out a little bit more rebound, because this is obviously around the axle on the bump stop, and we've ended up with a not inconsiderable 31mm more total suspension travel from full compression back to full rebound. So that, I'm confident, will give Monty a much better ride. He will no longer be riding on the bump stops. He will be using the damper as the damper was designed. We've got 31mm of stroke, which we've already ascertained. If the damper was designed for this, because of the way that I'm having to compress the rod using the licorice oil salt and the Triumph rebound bump stop, will put me back in the zone where basically the rear Bilstein damper will be able to move like this. Which is quite a nice bit of additional suspension travel, and the damper can actually function as a damper. Happy days. Well, Morgan, not really that impressed with this atrocious thing. Very hard rubber. Confident this is going to be much better. Confident licorice all sorts going to make a better job of the Bilstein. Confident we're going to have better rear suspension. Let's get it all back together. Right, so you find me sniffing around the back end of Monty, shall we say, and let me show you how these bump stops will look. So hopefully some of you are familiar with the original bump stop. We've obviously looked at that already, and where it's mounted, it's just basically mounted to the chassis rail. You'll see in a moment, but more importantly what I wanted to show you is what's happening here. Now we've just trial mounted the Triumph one. and there it is. So we can now see, I'm going to have just jacked the axle slightly, so we'll just put it up on a block of wood just slightly so I could remove the original rubber one. So it's not all of that we're gaining. As I've already said, to be honest, it's probably only 5mm at best. 5mm still counts. So you can see the face where the other one was screwed down to, the grey zinc area, all these later traditional chassis Morgans had a galvanised chassis, which is a very good idea, of course. And so my major concern was the spring mount, and whether the U-bolts were going to interfere with getting the Triumph rebound bump stop in place so that it bears directly over. But actually, if we took it at that angle, probably just come back a little bit like that. So the only thing I would say is had to just slightly move the rear brake line out. So that's the hard line on the rear brakes. But that just moved away. It was just a matter of gently thumbing it out of the way. And the only other thing I would say is, I can't remember on the Triumph axles, it's such a long time ago I used to restore these things, but whether there is actually a stop to stop this thing from migrating over time back this way. The cable ties will hold it real tight, but I think time will tell. These things are, very easy to remove and refit. So like I say, they're just on a cable tie. So I'll just be monitoring that for a period of time just to see whether it migrates. It decides to migrate this way. There's actually no reason why it should want to creep this way. The cable ties will hold it tight, but if it comes too far this way, obviously it's going to miss bearing on the chassis rail, and we do not want that. I don't think it will. I think it's just a matter of keeping an eye on it. But so far so good. I'm actually very happy with how these panned out. Like I say, I used to use the old original stand part Triumph rebound bump stops. They are a compression bump stop as well, in the case of the Triumph. But I used to use them years and years ago, and they worked pretty well, to be honest. I mean, nothing with a solid axle is going to give you superb ride quality, especially with leaf springs, but needs must. I don't think the very expensive 5-link for the back end of these Morgans that's available in actual fact is the holy grail. You're still left with a beam axle at the end of the day, so I'm not throwing that kind of money at it. 50 quid for some rebound bump stops, Triumph ones, but in upgraded polyurethane for 50 quid suits me well, and a couple of free of charge compression bump stops, the licorice all sorts as I'm calling them, that were given to me by ProTech when I bought the front dampers, will do the trick on the compression. So let's give the car another 30 odd mil of compression stroke rebound travel from full compressed to full rebound, and I'm certain the rear damper will be able to work much better in that fashion. The Bilstein dampers are very good, actually. Obviously, you're still stuck with the ridiculous orientation that Morgan put them in that fights against the normal direction of the axle as it swings back, which is why it's screwed up all the lower bushes. But for the time being, I think that's going to be fine. And then as we look down here, there'll be some brackets welded onto the axle tube, and once they're welded on, and also to the upper hoop as well. And again, hopefully you can see the upper hoop there, a bit of carpet hanging down, sorry. And then the distance between there, the axle tube, and the upper hoop, especially in the way that I design my brackets, because I think the brackets can hang low, and the rear hoop brackets can sit high. We will have quite a considerable distance. Also, I'm looking to bring these brackets out from the axle forward of the axle, so the pivot point for the coilovers is lower pivot point for the coilovers is further forward, and the upper pivot point on this axle hoop, that's partially obscured by the carpet, apologies for will sit high, so the distance between the two will be quite considerable, and the upper ones will sit back as well. So we'll have what in an ideal world we need, which is a vertical damper operating in the correct swing, the backward swing of the axle, and obviously the longer the spring and the damper, the better the dampering effect will be. The more vertical it is, the less of the of geometry compromises you'll have, and ultimately, by being a coilover, having a spring on there too, although it'll only be about £100, so they're basically motorcycle rear coilovers, will give me ride height adjustment as well, or at least it'll allow me to move the body away from the rear axle more precisely, which again will increase compression and rebound travel. So that's the plan. We're getting there. Okay, and here we are now back, so I can show you what they look like fitted. Just to remind you, here are the horrible Morgan hard rubber ones that bolt in, and they live underneath, as I've said before, on that zinc area. So they sit down in there on that zinc area. That's probably the best way to see it, like that. So they're kind of in here, probably can't get them in, but that's the sort of thing. They live down there. And now you can see the Triumph ones, and they're looking spot on. Very happy with those. One thing I did do was I put the ratchet clips for the cable ties at the back, so there was no chance of them facing down and perhaps getting a clout. Probably unnecessary, seeing as the depth of the bump stop is sufficient to protect them, but ultimately that's where I've chosen to put them. Now the big test is this going to migrate, you know? And do you know what? Not a chance. That is really on there. So you can see they're now bearing down. It might be with the camera now on it that I can actually bring them out slightly. And let's see how easy it is to migrate them out. Oh, that's difficult. Okay. Yeah, they will come, but they're not going to migrate on their own. That's looking about right. Happy with that. Right, so Triumph TR3 rebound, and in the case of the Triumph bump stops, to replace the ghastly hard rubber ones as just bolted to the chassis rail by Morgan. Do you know what? I think that's going to work. It's certainly going to be 5mm more rebound travel, and this is much better material, this new poly, than hard rubber. It's going to be a little bit softer, and it's going to last a lot longer, and it's just that little bit more compliance, and it's going to give me 5mm more rebound travel in addition to the additional compression travel that I've managed to reclaim on the Bilstein damper, for a total of 31mm more complete travel from full compression to full rebound. That's going to work. Right, time to get the damper back on here. That's where it lives. These brackets apparently do break, but Monty's never has. The kind of clips around the drum, sort of a horseshoe shaped thing, and there was a number of iterations of these, I believe, and they just got stronger and stronger. I guess Monty just got the stronger ones, because he's never had any problems with the horseshoe bracket that lives behind my finger here breaking. So we'll get the Bilstein dampers back on. We'll do the same Triumph rebound bump stop system on the back. We'll use the same, obviously, liquid short salt on both dampers, so we've got the same compression bump stops, and that's Monty's suspension, rear suspension, sorted, until at which point I'll stick a set of coilovers on it. Happy days.